The Saturday after this video is published is May Day, also known as International Workers' Day or simply Labor Day to most of the world. Not here in the United States. We observe Labor Day in September because we want to celebrate the working class, but not like a bunch of commies. So, I thought it would be fun to mark Labor Day, Lab-Hour Day, Labor Day. I thought it would be fun to mark Lab-Hour Day by talking about an episode of Star Trek that deals with issues of workers' rights and labor relations. I'm talking, of course, about an episode from the 4th season of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Bar Association. It's the Bajoran time of cleansing, and business at Quark's is slow, which Quark is taking out on his employees. Rom's feeling under the weather. He pours some Alka-Seltzer in his ear, but it doesn't help. Lita says, "I think Rom needs to go lie down." And Quark's like, "Thanks for the suggestion. I think you should shut up and spin the Dabo wheel." But nobody's playing Dabo, because you're not spinning the wheel. You get how that's circular logic, right? Circular like a Dabo wheel, which you should be spinning right now? Anyway, Rom's like, "Hey, I'm gonna pass out now." So Rom ends up in the infirmary, and Bashir's like, "Got yourself an ear infection there, bud. Pretty nasty one, too. An ear infection like this could be fatal to a Ferengi, because, you know." Rom says he would have come in sooner, but he couldn't get away from work, because Ferengi labor contracts don't allow for sick time. Bashir's like, "Your contract sucks. You should get a new one." Rom's like, "How am I supposed to do that? Ferengi labor contracts are all the same. What you need is a union to keep you and your fellow employees from being exploited." But Ferengi workers don't want to end the exploitation. They want to become bosses so they can get in on the exploitation themselves. Merciless exploitation of workers by bosses is literally the foundation of our entire society. I could never start a union. Anyway, 3 scenes later, Rom's like, "Let's start a union." The other Ferengi who work for Quark point out that there's this thing called the Ferengi Commerce Authority that is basically this omnipotent government agency with the power to ruin people's lives, and they aren't going to be too happy that a bunch of Ferengi unionized. But Rom sells them on the idea by framing it in terms of how much they stand to profit. Collective bargaining could get them not only higher wages, but also benefits like paid vacations and sick leave. When a Ferengi sees an opportunity, he seizes it, Rom tells them. And in a few seconds, everybody is cheering and chanting, "Union! Union! Union!" Well, if you want higher wages, let me tell you what to do. You got to talk to the workers in the bar with you. Got to build you a union. Got to make it strong. And if we all stick together, well, 'twon't be long. You'll get shorter hours. More latinum in your pocket. Vacations with pay, take the kids down to Bajor. Rom needs some advice on starting the union he just started, so he finds Dr. Bashir, who is in sickbay with O'Brien, debating whether to remove a cyst or paint a face on it and pretend it's a second head. That's not my joke. That's actually in the episode. It's delightful. Anyway, Rom's like, "Hey, I took your advice and started that union." And Bashir's like, "Holy shit, what? You did what?" "I started a union, like you said." Jesus Christ, Rom, I was only speaking theoretically. I'm an intellectual. I just say stuff. I don't expect anyone to actually act on it in the real world. Are you insane? O'Brien is a lot more enthusiastic about Rom's union. He's like, "Hey, did you know one of my ancestors led the Pennsylvania coal miners' strike of 1902? And Rom's like, "No, because I have no idea where Pennsylvania is or what the number 1902 means." O'Brien tells Rom that the strike lasted for 11 months, and those coal mines stayed closed until all the miners' demands were met. Rom's like, "So we should strike?" And Bashir jumps in with, "Well, you might not have to. Maybe Quark will agree to your demands." O'Brien's like, "Shut the fuck up, bootlicker. Rom, you're totally gonna have to strike, and when you do, you'll have to be strong. Like my courageous ancestor, who was shot between 32 and 34 times and was fished out of the river like a week later, by the way." Bashir says, "Well, at least your ancestor died a hero." And O'Brien replies to that with one of my favorite lines from the entire series. He turns to Bashir and says, "He was more than a hero. He was a union man." "You've got a union now, and you're sitting pretty. Put a couple Ferengi on the steering committee. Quark don't pay attention when poor Rom squawks, but he's got to listen when the union talks. He'd better." Promenade'd be awfully quiet. Everybody decided to walk out on him. Rom and his fellow employees meet with Quark, and Rom's like, hey, we're a union now and we have some demands. Just reasonable stuff like wage increases, shorter hours, paid sick leave. Quark's like, oh, sure, I hear you. I do have a counterproposal. Eat shit and get back to work. Quark's counterproposal is rejected, so the union goes on strike. Quark comes back to Rom a little later to offer him a bribe to end the strike, but Rom bows up and quotes Karl Marx right in Quark's face. Workers of the world, unite. You have nothing to lose but your chains. Quark's like, I smell a rat. A big commie rat. Now, Rom, you've come to the hardest time, because Quark will try to bust your picket line. He'll call out security, the FCA. He'll tell you it's a crime to want vacation pay. He'll take a beating. He'll wind up left for dead. He'll blame you that those Nausicaans busted his head. Disloyal brother. Weak-lobed fool. Corrupted by the Federation. So yeah, Liquidator Brunt of the FCA shows up at Quark's and he's like, we need to end this strike, so I'm going to have my Nausicaan goons kick the shit out of someone Rom cares about to convince him to break up the union and get back to work. And guess who won the pony? Is that a Jim Cornette quote? You're Jim Cornette now? I'm way less problematic. Anyway, let me introduce you to my associates, Loverboy Denisek and Beautiful Bob Anagar. The Nausicaans kick the shit out of Quark as promised. He ends up in the infirmary and Rom comes to see him. Quark's like, they beat me up because of you and your union. Are you happy now? Rom's like, kinda. Also, I'm not ending the strike until you give us what we want. Quark says, don't you get it, dipshit? Next time they won't go after me, they'll go after you. End the strike. You end the strike. Agree to our terms. If I do that, then the FCA will kill me. How is that better than them killing you? Well... Finally, Quark's like, okay, look, here's my offer. You dissolve the union and get everybody back to work. That'll get the FCA off both our asses. You do that, and I will meet all of your demands. All of them? Even paid sick leave? Yes, even paid sick leave. Even higher wages? I mean, sure, we'll talk about it. I feel another Marx quote coming on. All that is solid melts into air. All that is holy... All right, fine, Jesus! And Quark was as good as his word. The workers got their higher wages and benefits, and with the Bajaran time of cleansing having come to an end, business was booming at the bar once again. And Rom? Why, Rom resigned as a waiter at Quark's and got a job as one of the station's diagnostic and repair technicians. This is one of my favorite episodes of Deep Space Nine, and because of the subject matter, it's a favorite of a lot of people, including many who aren't otherwise big Star Trek fans. It's not perfect, and I'll get to some of the reasons why in a minute, but let's focus on the positive first. Even by today's standards, in fact, especially by today's standards, this is an extremely progressive episode. It's a sad marker of how little certain things have advanced in the last 25 years that it's difficult to imagine a show taking such a bold pro-union stance nowadays. The power of labor unions in the United States has been steadily diminishing for decades, and we see the results in our economy with wages remaining stagnant while wealth inequality continues to increase. Bar Association not only shows us Rom and his fellow employees starting their own union. Through the example of O'Brien's ancestor, their struggle is explicitly tied to the real-life struggles of striking workers in the early 20th century. Through this episode, Star Trek acknowledges the difficult and often violent history of the labor movement, the fight for workers' rights, and tells us, when we consider that history and when we see similar events happening in the present, we should be on the side of the workers. The exploitation of Rom and the other employees by Quark, their employer, is shown to be unambiguously bad and inexcusable, and the formation of a union and the use of collective bargaining by the workers to get Quark to meet their reasonable demands is shown to be good and even heroic. There's a small amount of attention paid to people other than Quark and Brunt who have anti-union beliefs, but the tone and perspective of the episode makes it pretty clear that we're not supposed to be on their side. There's a scene with Odo and Quark where Odo's like, you know what? I don't like unions either. They're a threat to order. And there's a scene where Worf crosses the picket line to go to Quark's and ends up in a fight with proud union man O'Brien over it. We don't really get any specifics about what Worf is thinking, though presumably he crosses the picket line because he's hungry or thirsty and doesn't give a shit about the strike, one way or the other. Odo's objections to the strike are rooted in his narrow worldview that prizes order above pretty much everything else, and while it's consistent with Odo's character to have that be his opinion, the episode doesn't do anything to argue in favor of that opinion. Before the FCA shows up, the first third party to intervene and attempt to end the strike is Captain Sisko, who puts the pressure where it belongs, not on Rom and the Union, but on Quark. Sisko tells Quark flat out, "You've got a sweet deal here with the Federation as your landlord. We don't charge you rent, or for repairs, or for your use of the station's power. So either you and Rom get together and settle this strike, or I'm sending you an invoice for 5 years of back rent and bills." It doesn't work. Right after that is when Quark offers Rom the bribe, instead of even trying to reach an agreement for a new labor contract. But Sisko, as the lead protagonist of the series, is depicted as recognizing whose responsibility it truly is to end a labor dispute. The employer who has been profiting from exploiting his employees. They're the ones who should be pressured to compromise, not the striking workers who are just advocating for their best interests in the best way they can. Bar association works for reasons beyond how it dramatizes a labor dispute. It's a great episode for Rom, really important for the development of his character, his relationship with Lita, and one of the most significant turning points in his relationship with Quark. Second only to the time he stands up for Nog at the end of Heart of Stone in Season 3, I'd say. Throughout Bar Association, Rom exhibits the characteristics that will come to define his character over the second half of the series. Compassion, conviction, and a willingness to reinterpret Ferengi tradition and doctrine so they don't conflict with his evolving principles. Rom is one of Deep Space Nine's most appealing characters, and the key to that appeal, for me, is the way he evolves and changes throughout the show's run, in ways that are surprising but also consistent with his established personality. And of course, it doesn't hurt that his character evolution is accomplished through excellent episodes like this one. But, like I said, the episode's depiction of labor relations isn't perfect. The resolution of the strike is too neat, and Rom agreeing to dissolve the Union feels short-sighted. Yes, Quark agrees to meet their demands this time, but what if there's another labor dispute in the future? The threat of the FCA being able to ruin the business if the Union isn't busted feels legitimate, and I don't blame Quark or Rom for being concerned about it, but Quark winds up getting his business license revoked by the FCA at the end of this same season anyway, so nobody really gains anything in the long run by dissolving the Union. The episode where Quark gets nuked by the FCA, Body Parts, is a good one, but its ending, where Quark thinks he's ruined only to be rescued by his friends on the station helping him to reopen the bar, would have worked just as well, if not better, as part of the conclusion to Bar Association, with Quark losing his FCA license for recognizing the Union instead. That's a relatively minor quibble, though, all things considered. This is a really good episode with an admirably unapologetic pro-Union message, which is a big deal because I cannot overemphasize how uncommon that is in popular culture. Like, in the first episode of Superman and Lois, Lois has one line where she attacks Morgan Edge for predatory business practices, including paying low wages and engaging in union busting, and I was like, it just doesn't happen that often. And for a show, even a show as progressive as Star Trek typically is, to produce an entire episode about the importance of labor unions is a rare and wonderful thing. So yeah, I like Bar Association because it's a good episode dramatically speaking, but I also like it because it's pro-union. And so am I. And I'm pro-union because I think unions are the most effective way for workers to protect their rights and fight for fair treatment and their best interests. We need more unions and stronger unions because a society where the owners and bosses don't have all the power, where the people can expect a fair wage for a day's work, and where workers don't have to sacrifice their health or their quality of life for their jobs, is a better society for everybody. It's nice to see my favorite sci-fi franchise unashamedly sending that message. Because they're at Quark's, here's what they found. And at the Klingon restaurant, here's what they found. And at the Celestial Cafe, here's what they found. And at the Jump-Stick kiosk, here's what they found. And if you don't let bribe offers break you up, and if you don't let Nausicaans break you up, and if you don't let Ferengi tradition break you up, and you don't let the FCA break you up, you'll win. What I mean, take it easy, but take it.